Hey everybody, I'm Shane Ireland. I'm here with a very special guest, although it's not his first time joining me at this little table here. Erik, welcome back. Erik Stokkebye.
Thank you, Shane.
Fourth gen pipes, pipe tobaccos, and accessories. What I wanted to talk about today, Erik, you and I had a chance early last year to sort of touch on this idea of how a blender, specifically in the context of pipe tobacco, but I think it's similar for spirits and cigars and everything else, coffee, whatever. A blender in a business like this, with a medium like this, that it is sort of a constant evolution, right? Like you're never done with your work as a blender.
Right.
Otherwise, you and Jeremy Reeves and Perry Jensen, all these guys would only work 4 days a year, and then there would be no other work to do, right? That's not how it works.
Right.
You have to constantly revisit both the raw materials that you're getting and the approach, the production, everything.
Yeah.
So we chatted a little bit about that last year, and you gave us a glimpse into basically what your project for 2024 was, which was to, let's say, effectively remaster some of those blends, and revisit all of those many variables we discussed.
Right.
So I was kind of curious how that's going and what your experience was, and if you could give us a little bit more context and shed a little bit more light on the process of undertaking something like this.
Sure. Yeah, I did. Well, first of all, I want to say that, we are dealing with a farming product. Tobacco.
A natural product, yeah.
It's a natural product, and it changes all the time depending on soil, wind, and weather. So I spent a fair amount of time this past year, summer in Denmark, with some of the blenders that I work with. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to make sure that we get absolutely the best quality in our tobaccos.
Of course.
And so I spent quite a bit of time with the blenders looking at leaf tobaccos and seeing that whether we can make some improvements in the blends that makes them better than basically what we have.
Yeah.
And it was a great planning session, and also really a lot of fun to do.
Of course, yeah.
We touched on pretty much all their different leaf tobaccos, and I think that we came up with, at the end of the run, or at the end of the day, if you will.
Sure.
We came up with some really, really nice stuff. So it was really, for me, how can we optimize our blends in the process of making really good pipe tobaccos.
Yes.
And that's what I did. I hope I did.
I'm sure you did. You have enough experience that I'm sure that's how it ended up. So before I ask some specific questions, just so that I can understand here, there are basically constant variables and constant challenges to maintain consistency and to deal with, like I said, the variables of a natural grown product, and also the processes in production surrounding pipe tobacco and the many cuts, the many pressing or not pressing, steaming or not steaming, Oriental leaf versus Virginia, different levels of oils, all that stuff. There's so many variables that I think what I'm hearing is, well, first of all, what's the famous quote about how basically you're always a student?
Yeah.
Even if you have done this for decades, even if you're a total master in every sense of the word of your medium, that you never stop learning.
You don't.
And I respect and appreciate the fact that, that, like I said, it's kind of like the analogy that I've used previously is that a musical artist puts out an album and then that album gets remastered. It's not about rewriting anything. It's not about changing the lyrics. It's about like taking what you have at your disposal today and making it better. Yeah,
exactly.
Or closer to the original vision or whatever.
Exactly.
So in this context, you are doing some reformulating, doing some sourcing differently, probably, all that kind of stuff. And how does one, in a situation like that, how do you know that you've achieved the same experience? Like, how much of it is intuition? How much of it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you really don't know until you get the results.
The final product, basically.
The final product, and you get the comments from your customers.
Oh, yeah.
You know, obviously they have to like it. But before that happens, I think it's a question of really picking out what you feel. I have some experience with that. What do you feel is the best quality? What do you feel tastes the best? And does it come close to what you originally had thought this blend should be?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you have a result, end result in mind,
Right.
And
many years of smoking those blends
and many
since
years,
their inception.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's really it's a lot of testing. It's a lot of testing. It's a lot of smoking the leaf tobaccos pure, making sure that that's the right leaf tobacco that you want in your blend. And so it's a process. It's a long process.
Yeah.
But I feel, going into this year, 2025, I feel really excited about
That's fantastic.
what we came up with, and I hope that the pipe smoker will do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
specifically on the actual process of this, you mentioned that it's basically, it's trial and error.
Right.
There's no way around that.
Right.
Like you can look at the stats for a given tobacco on paper and
Right.
maybe that's still not, that can inform the experience, I'm sure. I'm sure that you've done this long enough where if you're looking at a certain sugar content, you're looking at a certain nicotine content,
Right.
you have an idea
Yeah.
of where it came from. Like I have an idea of what this is going to be like, but the variation from crop year to crop year, grade to grade, all that kind of stuff.
exactly. Yeah.
Do you have one single approach when you're testing components, or does that approach vary depending on the type of components you're testing? So let me
Okay.
to be a little more specific. Are you smoking all your Virginias in a clay, and then you're smoking your Orientals in a briar? Like, do you just like let the tobacco burn and smell it? How much
Right.
of it is aroma? How much of it is visual? Like,
Right.
what's the process for you specifically?
Well, for me, the process is for smoking leaf tobaccos, you basically use clay. I mean, I like to use clay because I think that's the cleanest form of smoking leaf tobacco. Now, the end product, whether it's an aromatic or whether it's an English blend or a flake, I like to smoke in a briar pipe because that's
arguably that's how most consumers are going to
and
experience.
that's how most consumers, so most pipe smokers, kind of experience is smoking the end product in a briar pipe. So
Yeah.
that's usually the process that I go through.
Yeah, so you start with a clay, and then
Start
once
with
once
clay.
you've actually gotten to a point where it's a fully formed blend,
Right.
you might shift to briar and
Exactly.
evaluate it like in
Exactly.
a more,
Yeah.
I guess, common setting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
Yeah.
How much of again, I'm assuming that since we're talking about basically version 2.0 of some of these blends, or the remastering, if you wanna use that analogy. For those of us that have never done this, for those of us that have only ever really smoked final products,
Right.
And that have not had access to hundreds and hundreds of grades and qualities of tobacco, how possible is it that a small change affects the blend overall? Like, how perceivable is that to the novice?
A small change in the leaf blend is not going to be a huge experience. I mean, it's very minor,
It's very minor.
if any.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that because most blends, including the fourth generation blends, consist of usually somewhere between 14 to 16, 17 different leaf tobaccos. Even if it's a pure, let's say, Virginia blend,
Sure.
there could be 16 different grades of Virginia within that one Virginia blend.
And multiple sources for those grades.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Sounds complicated.
yeah, it is actually quite complicated, but it's done that way because eventually you do have to shift out one of the grades because you can't get it anymore.
Sure.
You can get something that's maybe close, and changing it in a blend where there's 15 other, the difference is going to be very minor.
So it basically preserves consistency over
Exactly.
many years of production.
And to me, consistency equals quality. That I think that's very important.
Yeah, I would
Very
agree.
important.
I
Yeah,
would agree.
exactly. But what I try to achieve here is to really make the blends that we have better, and I think we come that far.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So basically a similar experience, but informed by more experience of your own and,
Right.
and all of that.
Yeah.
So I guess this is a rather obvious question, but for those of us who maybe haven't done a lot of research on the subject, I'll ask it anyway. So you're being really transparent about this whole process, which I find fascinating, and I really appreciate that as a consumer. How common is it for blends to be changing all the time, and we're just never informed? Like in terms of like grades being not available and all that sort of stuff.
It's pretty common, actually.
Yeah.
It is pretty common. It happens. To name some examples, if one factory buys another factory, you're going to find a change because the one factory may have used different leaf than the other factory. So there you're going to find
Those are bigger changes, more obvious changes.
bigger obvious changes. And then within a brand portfolio, if you will, I mean, it happens, but over time.
Yeah, sure.
Because most factories, they have usually a leaf inventory of 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
So it's a very slow but gradual transition.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So is it safe to say that, like, I think a lot of us think of blending tobacco, like I said, I think this applies to cigars and whiskey and all sorts of other stuff. We think of the job of blender or whoever the primary person is that's conceived of these products, we think of the job as being almost all the creative process in the beginning. But actually that is, technically what I'm hearing is that's a fraction of the responsibility. Like maintaining the blends into the future and again letting them evolve and letting them be remastered, if you will, is probably a lot more work than even the original formulation.
It is. It is. I mean, the original formulation is also time-consuming, but the remastering is also. I mean, I would say it's actually very similar. At the end of the day.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's the same process you go through. If you have something new you're coming up with, it takes several trial and errors before you come up with what you think this is the right blend. When you do the remastering, very similar. I mean, you try to make you try to get to a goal where you feel this is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So how often can you envision yourself doing this sort of a deep dive in terms of the remastering, in terms of the evolution of these blends?
Yeah. I mean, I have been through this twice now.
Specifically for this line. Yeah.
Specifically for this line, yeah. So it doesn't have to happen like every other year or every year.
Sure.
But occasionally, I think it happens.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So.
Well, especially if you're concerned with making sure that there's improvements in the quality and the experience is similar and all that.
Exactly.
Gosh, that's so fascinating. Yeah. I think so many of us sort of take that for granted, that the work is not just like, okay, here's the blend and they're just following a recipe card and all those many grades of tobaccos are easily, substituted for one or another and stuff. And it seems much more painstaking than that.
Right.
So we've talked a lot about how you spent the time last year remastering these blends, which I do really like that term now.
Right.
I've said it too many times, I think. Is that the entire portfolio? What did you look at specifically that has been, let's say, tinkered with, improved upon?
It's basically most of the tin line.
Okay. I would imagine not Max Erik's blend because this is the most recent release.
That's the most recent release, yeah.
Okay.
So it's all the other ones, starting with the 1957.
Yeah.
My blend, and all the way down to 1882.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So basically, all of the, let's say, sort of more original tin blends.
Exactly.
And the bulk portfolio similarly is newer.
Yeah.
And
we decided that stays as is.
that stays as is for now.
Exactly.
Okay. Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. You never know.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
So yeah.
So yeah, I would. I'm excited to get into smoking these again and revisiting some old friends. I encourage you guys to do the same.
Yeah.
For those of us that have not already been enjoying the 4th generation blends, like if you're new to the hobby or new to the brand, can you give us a recommendation for where they might start?
Yes. I think again, looking at my own, the 1957, my blend, I think that still is a relatively mild Virginia with a little bit of a topping to it.
Yeah.
But really just a
It's very approachable.
very approachable, very good aroma. Something you can smoke all day if you
Yeah.
want. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a good place to start.
yeah, good place to start.
I feel like that one also, not that the other blends do not, but I feel like that one also really encompasses at least what I think of as the sort of quintessential Danish Virginia.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Light Virginia. Yeah,
Mhm,
exactly. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
good start.
It's a good start.
for a newcomer.
Yeah.
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 And worth revisiting also.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Erik.
Thank you.
Always
Jay.
good to catch up.
Same here.
And thanks so much for watching, guys.
Thank you.